Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina wa nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Rabbana atina min ladunka rahmah wa hayyi' lana min amrina rashada. Tonight's program is titled Gaza, a critical reflection on the state of the Muslim Ummah. It's really one of the best of times and the worst of times. Today in my work in the care office, I received a call from the family member of someone whose cousin was detained in Bush Airport today. They had come from Lebanon. They're a Palestinian refugee, but they've, a respectable mechanical engineer who has gone through the rigorous process of getting the diversity visa, the one that makes you a candidate for the green card lottery. And he spent many years going through this process, and he's gone through and spent his life savings to come to America and to establish himself here legally, to support his family back home, like many of us did when we first came, either ourselves or our parents or our grandparents. Someone came to this country to seek better economic opportunities, and in many cases, sometimes safety and asylum from trouble in home countries. But unfortunately, this brother was detained without reason by the Border Patrol, and his family members here in Houston were not allowed to contact him. And so I tried to advocate, contacting lawyers, trying to understand. We got a press release, the Houston Chronicle called us. But subhanAllah, today I learned that he was already put on a plane to go back to the Emirates. And then we're going to keep in touch with him. But there is no reason, no explanation as to why he was detained and then ultimately sent back. So it's a time of confusion, a time of where Muslims, people from abroad, generally speaking, it's not just Muslims, it's everyone trying to come into the country. They are being, without reason, without any explanation, even though they've gone through the legal process, being sent back, and very difficult, not giving any legal counsel when they're being held. So these are the times we're in. But I say also that it's the best of times as well, because in the da'wah scene, these last 2 years have seen an enormous number of people coming to Islam, seeing the resilience of the people of Gaza, seeing the faith and the iman and our Islam being demonstrated. Numerous people, large numbers of people are accepting Islam. And even today, I spoke to a brother who used to be a Christian pastor. He used to be a Christian pastor, and he went to Baptist seminary, and he was a preacher in different states, and he's here in Houston. And I was talking to him, I was like, so you used to be a Christian pastor and you accepted Islam? And he's like, yeah, for many years I questioned the theology, I questioned the presentation of Christianity by Western Europe and its colonialist, imperialist agenda. And so but I loved Isa alayhi salam. And so when I came across him and the narrative of Isa alayhi salam in the Quran, I became convinced. And so all of these things that are happening, there are some terrible things that are happening, especially to the people of Gaza, to the people all over the world. In America, Muslims are being persecuted and oppressed. Any sort of, our fundamental freedom to speak openly, it's almost like back home. But this is a sacred privilege for Americans to be able to speak your beliefs, your political opinions without repression, without censorship, is an American ideal that we Muslims have benefited from, and it's part of our, even as Muslims, there's a contested history about whether or not you speak to power one camp says, yes, you do correct the authorities, and one camp says, no, you kind of stay quiet and listen as the Khalifa says. So it's an issue of debate within the Muslim Ummah. Nonetheless, we have someone who is very qualified to speak on this topic, Brother Muwaffaq. He's a member of our community. He gives khutbahs. He is a high-ranking engineer and is looking to give back to the community. He is from Gaza. His parents are from Palestine, and he will speak to us about this question that we prompted, about how Gaza itself is a reflection of the Muslim Ummah. Take it away, Brother Muwaffaq.
Thank you, brother. Correction, I'm from Palestine, not from Gaza. So Palestine as a whole, my mom is from Jerusalem, my dad from Hebron. So just for the record. So, Bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, I want to say I'm privileged and honored to be asked to come and talk to the community. I'd like to declare that I am not a scholar, I am not an expert, I am not a specialist. I'm just a human being that happened to like to research, like to make sense of things, likes to connect the dots where sometimes in some cases no one else is connecting them. Or they're connecting them but they're not talking about it, right? So our subject today really is going to be, you heard me through many of the khutbah that I've done for the past couple of months. It's really what's going on in Gaza. It's an impact on and a reflection on the health of the Ummah. If you think the Ummah is in the ICU right now, and Gaza is that monitor that keeps on beeping and giving you the condition of what the Ummah is. And truly, I'm hoping this is what I'm about to share with you or talk about is absolutely my own view of things. Please do not accept it as, as gospel. It's not. But I'm leaving you, at the end, I would leave you with QR codes for many of the resources and reports and authors that I follow, right? And from which this information here gathered. Now the information, you can find it in small islands, but the question is, how do you connect those islands and make it make sense, right? This is my view. By no means I am not asking anyone else to believe it, but I would like at least to trigger a thought and trigger a conversation. So inshallah, Allah will assist and help me with that. Okay, so thank you so much. One of my favorite probably historians, authors, professors is Howard Zinn. And I would leave a QR code for his homepage. Howard Zinn has been a very outspoken, very instrumental in really looking through the smoke and mirror of capitalism and the political system to really present the truth as it is. And one of his famous quotes, which if you allow me, he said, if you don't know your history, it's as if you were born yesterday. And if you were born yesterday, anybody in power can tell you something and you have no way to check it. So they teach you history. So before we talk about Gaza, it's really important to understand, I always, when I'm challenged with something that, whether it's on the news or something that happens, my training, my practice is always ask the why. Why this is happening? Does it make sense? And then keep going into why. Most of the time I go, it's a method in management and in project management, organization, executive management. It's called the 5 whys, right? The 5 W's. And the question is you keep drilling into to find the root cause of something until it makes sense. So the first thing that I want to talk about really is about the history of the Ummah and why a lot of let's just say non-Muslims in power are scared and worried and about that, right? So Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam received the first revelation in 610, the year 610 of our calendar year. He lived in Mecca 12 years. We know that there was not much expansion then, and then really the beginning of the Islamic civilization, if you will, as far as a lot of historians talk about, is when the Prophet ﷺ made it to Medina, and that's in the year 622. And between the year 622 and 610, the Prophet ﷺ was able to unify something that Arabs at the time thought that it can never be done, which in 10 years he was able to unify most of the Arabian Peninsula. As you know, it was tribal, it was different regions, belonged to different tribes, and there was never unity. And then the Khilafah, after Rasulullah ﷺ, the Khilafah started. And this is where the West really gets nervous. In 29 years from when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu became the Khalifa, in 29 years he managed to expand Islam all the way to Libya in the west and to Persia in the east. So with the smallest number of Muslims compared to an empire like the Persian Empire, right? It doesn't make sense, right? When you have 1,000 or 500 should never be able to beat an army that's thousands of years old with lots of experience and with the numbers that sometimes go 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the Muslims. But they did. Why? Because they have trust in God and they have the belief that we currently believe and we have. So, that continues obviously from the Khilafah, then the Umayyan Khilafah start, and in the next 128 years there's nothing but expansion, and the empire, they call it empire, the Muslims never really called it empire, right? Expanded all the way from North Africa, Spain. There was Western expansion, Gibraltar. There was global expansion, and it became a global civilization in a very short period of time. So that takes us to the early 1900s, which is the last Khilafah, and I'm sorry, I'm going to put my timer because I have the habit of over talking and talking so too much, so I'm going to put my timer so I can keep it. So the final, obviously, phase of the Muslim empire was the Ottoman Empire. They call it the Ottoman Empire, even the Western call it the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire, for those that know a little bit probably about history, they didn't want to enter the war. They really didn't want to join. They wanted to be, neutral.
Which war?
What's up?
Which war?
World War I, I'm sorry. So now we're talking about World War I, 1914, 1912. But they felt that they are stuck in the middle. So they were coerced in a way, and this is not my words, this is a lot of the historians. They, through some spies that were on the inside of the Ottoman Empire, that had some influence, They first went to Britain and France to join their side. Britain and France said no. So coincidence happened and they joined the Central Power side, which is Germany, Hungary, and the rest. Little that they knew that Britain and France have already been planning against the Ottoman Empire, right? So in 1914, I'm gonna keep the dates correct here. So in 1914, the Ottoman Empire enters World War I. Then by 1917, that's 3 years later, signs of the loss of the war became very evident, right? To the point where Britain and France were already planning in 1916 and in 1917, before even the war ended, they were planning to dismantle the Ottoman Empire and subdivide it amongst themselves. And that started actually, a lot of us probably, again, read history and I'm sorry, give me one sec, because I am actually, yeah. So Sykes-Picot, which is, we learned about it in the books, we learned about it in the history, that happened in May of 1916. And that agreement was a secret agreement signed between Britain and France, dividing future, they don't have it yet, right? Future control of the Arab lands into spheres of influence. Britain took a mark, basically, or put a sticky note over Iraq, Transjordan, and Palestine. France put a sticky note over Syria and Lebanon. The goal was always to break up the Ottoman Empire. It had too much of influence. They know what the Muslims can do if they go back to their roots of the core religion. They fully understand. If you think about it, the Muslims ruled from Spain all the way to China, India. I mean, just to look at the map and think, not to mention, North Africa. So when you think about the vastness of the Ottoman Empire at the time, it was a scary thought, to the point where, and I'm gonna quote actually, Churchill, one of, so Winston Churchill, in his 1899 book, it's called The River War. He's a former British minister, critical, and was critical in his book of what he saw as the effect of Islam on the followers and global, right? And Quincy Adams, which is the 6th US president, described Prophet Muhammad as a wandering Arab on a lineage of Hagar, combining the powers of transcendent genius with a prematural agreement of energy on fanatic or fraudulent spirit. Right? So they already, the attacks were religious in nature since the beginning. Right? So fast forward to after World War I, the Ottoman Empire is completely dismantled. But here's the point in history that a lot of us don't really know much about. The Ottoman Empire played a very small part in the war. They really didn't, if you think about it, compared to what Germany did or Hungary did, the Ottoman Empire did very little. But yet, they received the most severe punishment at the end of the war. There was a treaty in 1920 called the Treaty of Sèvres in Paris. And this is what the treaty says. The Allies will impose, that's Britain and France, will impose Treaty Sèvres on the Ottoman government, recognize independence of Armenia and Kurdistan, grant Greece control over Izmir and the Eastern Thrace, place the Straits, which are the economic, bloodline of the Ottoman Empire, under international control, and divides Arab lands under British and French mandates. They didn't divide Germany. They didn't divide Hungary. They didn't divide Russia. They didn't divide any other country. But they divided and dismantled the Ottoman Empire to what we know today as the current Middle East and its own current borders, let's say. Obviously, the people of the Ottoman Empire did not go along. They did not like that treaty at all. They thought it's a treaty that's robbing them from, their own country, their own borders, their own decision making. So there was an uprising in Turkey, or what we know now as Turkey. There was an uprising and there was a freedom fighting that ended up forcing the Allies to come back to the negotiation table. Not that it did it much better than the first one, but they negotiated in 1923, negotiated a new treaty called the Lausanne Treaty, which was basically giving the birth of the modern Turkey. Right? It gave sovereignty to the Republic of Turkey. Again, there's no Ottoman Empire, there's no Muslim Islamic Empire. Now we have a country called Turkey that was recognized in 1923 and defines Turkey's modern borders, abolished foreign privileges, and then in October the Republic of Turkey was proclaimed with Ankara as its capital, and the Caliphate is later abolished in 1924, completing Turkey to be secular transformation. Why am I sharing all this history? Again, because if we don't know the history, then it's hard for us to understand the present. Right? So both treaties were really horrible for the Ottoman Empire. One of them was worse, obviously, than the other, but the result was exactly the same, which is what Britain and France wanted is the division and the takeover of all the territories that the Ottoman Empire did. I'm going to leave some papers here that talks about some of the backdoor dealings also that Britain was doing at the time, while they are making promises to the Arabs in Saudi Arabia. If you fight with us against the Ottoman Empire, we're going to give you all this land. In the meantime, they were also talking to European Jews to say, we're going to give you the same land, right? And that's the Balfour Declaration. So when you think about it, that was nothing but land steal at the time. But again, if you read the biography of a lot of the rulers and leaders that were part of that negotiation, you'll get to see that there's a much deeper reason for what they've done, which is Islamophobia. So Islamophobia is not a new term. That term, they did not call it Islamophobia, now we do, but really Islamophobia existed since the old times, right? So, then we move to 20th, 21st century, and we all know about, or we at least, most of us were here when Britain started and France started their colonization of the region, right? So you're talking 1949 or 1948, Israel was given Palestine, obviously as, by the Brits, which they didn't own it, but they still gifted it to them. Then there was in 1950 to 1960, there was a mass migration of the European Jews after World War II, which, by the way, even a lot of the older Israeli Jews speak about their experiences when they first fled Europe, coming to Palestine, the land called Palestine, as refugees on boats. And what did Palestinians do? They felt that those are people of the book. We have to help and assist. So many of the Palestinians, some of them my own family members, took on refugees and housed them in the same house. Fed them, housed them, shared everything with them. The spirit of the Muslims that migrated from Mecca to Al-Madinah, when they got to Al-Madinah and they shared, everybody was sharing with their brothers and sisters. That spirit still existed in the early 1900s between the Palestinians, sharing their God-given bounty with what they saw as, people of the book that are in desperate need. There's many stories you can, and this is again, not mine, that's the stories of many of the historians and many of the actual survivals from the Jewish descendant that actually came to Palestine at the time. And then, if anyone, familiar with the model Hadid, she's from Palestinian origins. And her dad actually have a very, almost as a short documentary, talks about her grandparents, which would be her dad's mom and dad, step-by-step experience of what happened to them, which obviously what happened to them happened to many of the Palestinian families. You take in a refugee, you bring them home, you're sharing your food, you're taking care of them, you're trying to give them work, and then one day you come home and the locks are changed, and you knock on, this is your own home. You wonder what's going on. You come back from the field, and that's what happened to my grandparents. You knock at the door, and the little window opens, and the refugee that you hosted in your own home tells you that if you don't go away, that's their home now, and if you don't go away, the soldiers will come and kill you. So you have no option but to walk away. And then truly, soldiers will come and you have to walk away. That's a deep part of the history, that not the focus actually of today's discussion. But the aftermath of the Ottoman Empire dismantling is, it goes on to 1950 to 1960, the additional migration of the European Jews that came into Palestine. By 1979, there was a peace agreement, Camp David, that was between Egypt, and so on and so forth. And history, as they say, history always will repeat itself. We unfortunately, our ancestors are very kind people, because we are all kind people, and we give the benefit of the doubt. So we get bit the first time, and then we say people change, and the second time comes, and I'm talking about all the treaties and agreements that actually we fell for, and they end up they end up being against us and not for us, right? And we went from the people who own the land, have a home, to the people now begging for recognition of a home, right? So that's our history. But then In my research, I find that it gets deeper. Most of us were alive around Gulf War I, Gulf War II, especially the events after, and what happened and how 9/11 was used against the Muslim Ummah. And then a group of politicians decided that there is a fundamental correction that needs to happen. Because as long as madaris and schools are graduating young Muslims, true Muslims, then the West and the powers in the West will always be under threat. That was their view. So someone in the Bush administration, to say the least, came up with this idea that the U.S., and obviously once the U.S. started it, other countries jumped on board, should start a program or multiple programs directed towards softening the core of the religion. Well, how do you soften it? Well, you're going to remove certain phrases, certain words, certain experiences from the books. But how do you do that? The people are going to go crazy. No. They built exchange programs, and they built intellectual scholar programs and advisements. And they started literally, and again, I have the links in the back of the paper. I'll leave it at the table. You can come and scan the QR code. And they created multiple programs. A program called Impact SE, a program called MIPI, Middle East Partnership Initiative, USAID Education Initiative. Look, they all have wonderful names, right? Targeted Effort Program, Open Book Project, Teaching and Learning, for educational excellence, with the acronym TALEEM, TALEEM. And if you research and find any of those programs, they literally pulled every textbook out of Arab countries, Muslim countries, burnt them, shredded them, and Westerners hired by, those governments rewrote the books, literally rewrote the history books to make it more peaceful in their view, meaning more favorable. So this way, when we educate, we're not educating extremists. Again, that's in their view. But they didn't stop there. I watched an interview with a gentleman or a man that presented himself in a video as the Israeli liaison to the Ministry of Awqaf, the religious ministry of the Jordanian government. The video is available, it's there. And I couldn't believe it when I heard it the first time, so I kept repeating it just so I can understand what the content is. And they started a program, and I'll leave some links actually to some of those programs, early in 2002, 2003, and so on and so forth. It wasn't enough to change the textbooks, because you still have imams in the masajid that are still preaching the traditional religion, the traditional Islam. So it wasn't enough that we changed the books. So we started retraining imams. This gentleman from the Israeli, ministry, internal ministry, he said he was assigned to work within the borders of Jordan, to work with imams to educate them on modern Islam. I don't have to go in details. You guys will get the gist of what happened, right? It's they removed a lot of material, historical information that we learned back in when we were young about the different battles and the different issues and events that happened between Jews and Muslims in Saudi Arabia and the peninsula. That's just too rough, too hard. So, and by the way, Noam Chomsky, both Noam Chomsky talks about that, and also Howard Zinn talks about that. One of them, I can't remember which one, wrote actual book talking about the history of the world or something related to that, and the history of the Middle East. The target for some of those programs, by the way, were Egypt, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Syria. Right? So that's where the program started for that, the impact program. And literally, this is from their website, and I can tell you, MIPI, for example, which is the Middle East Partnership Initiative, launched in 2002 by President George W. Bush. MIPI promotes political, economical, and educational reform in the Middle East and North Africa. Educational goals including promoting independent reading, critical thinking, and civic, education. Right? That's what they say. But if you start drilling down into the programs itself, you'll see. And I'm going to give you another excerpt from the Impact website. And Impact. It says, in the Middle East, curricular reform is frequently motivated by aspiration and modernization of educational system, cultivate national identity, and address socio-political challenges. These reforms manifest in content revision. This is on their website. Ideological reorientation. That's not my words, that's their words. So when I say during the khutbah and other imams during the khutbah, we say, Islam is under attack from the core of Islam. So we really have to be extra diligent in making sure the next generation still learns the religion the way we learned it, okay? Not the way they want us to learn it. So, and now you say, yeah, Brother Mo, but why? This is all like, why? Well, we all know that obviously majority of Muslim countries are very rich in resources. So here's what happened at least in the United States. There is a very deep economical interest, groups with economical interest, whether it's oil, whether it is gold, whether it's minerals. And then there's also another sector, another group, evangelicals, with religious agenda. So the best way to tackle this is to bring those two causes, conceal them as one. So for those that care about religious impact, we say it's an economic project. And for those that talk about, worried about economics, we say it's a faith base, it's a religious base. So it's a win-win situation. So this is where the groups got together, and groups like AIPAC, for example, started in the US, the most powerful group in the history of politics, to be honest. If you're not familiar with AIPAC, I encourage you to get familiar with them. That's APICA, AIPAC, which is
American-Israeli Council of Relations. Israeli consulate relationship?
Yeah, all I know is there's American and Israeli, right? It's like American, Israeli, blah, you know. Now, what's important to know about this particular group and influence, and we need to learn as an ummah, and this is my point, we must learn. If they do something and it's not illegal, then, and it works, we should be able to do the same thing. You know, they're technically advertising politician price list on their website. You go to their website and they show you exactly how much money they donated to each member of Congress. During the election, they actually have gauges that show their success rate. They have KPIs, right? They have metrics that they keep up with, which is what is the return on investment and how many seats in Congress and Senate have we gained by donating this money. And it's really weird because some of our politicians sell their soul for $5,000. Just doesn't make sense. The question is, on their website, AIPAC announced that last election cycle, they spent something like $100 million, right? So one day I was thinking, I'm like, you know, let's just not call it a Muslim movement. Let's just call it, you know, the American movement, with all the students that are, you know, going in the street and wanting to change and make changes. If each and every one of them dropped the price of a Starbucks coffee into a jar, you'll have over $1 billion. And if you have $1 billion, you can compete with those that are spending $1 million. Okay? Let's buy our country back. If it's for sale, let's buy it back legally. We just stop right now.
We'll do it at 8. We'll do it at 8:30.
Okay. So fast forward, AIPAC can be a separate topic all along, but please research it. Hopefully you're all familiar with it. If not, please get familiar with it. Understand why decisions get made always in favor of Israel, even against our own citizens in this country. We cut budget from schools, school lunches. One of our neighbor's kids, this semester, said that school cut the discounted lunch program because they're out of money. They don't have budget, right? But yeah, we're sending $100 billion to another nation. And I speak because I am an American, and I care about this country. And every Muslim that lives here should care about this country. We have the freedom, we have the potential, and our future is ours to make, right? But we need to learn from those who organized before us and succeeded, so we can organize ourselves following the same footsteps. It can't be illegal, because if it is, then they're in trouble. But it is absolutely legal. So how can we organize as an ummah? And I'm hoping the next generation, the smart people of the next generation, will take the foundation that the first generation, second generation Americans came here. The next generation will take it and hopefully organize it a little bit better than we did, and become influential in, you know, social, political agenda, which that's really what scares a lot of those in power. So the big why, all this why. So I have to admit, I went to ChatGPT, not for, you know, anything other than I wanted to ask ChatGPT if I today form a hypothetical Muslim union with all the Muslim countries, hypothetical, what is the economical, political, geographical impact on the world would be? So, allow me. I'm going to share that with you because we're going to close with that. So we will have a population as a Muslim. Actually, it's funny because ChatGPT even gave it a name, and it says UMU, United Muslim Union, right? Called it by itself. So, population almost 2 billion, right? Not shabby, not bad. That makes a little over 25% of the world population. Land area will have 30 million kilometers square. That makes about 20% of the global land. GDP combined, that's gross domestic product, how much we produce as Muslim Ummah. If we are a factory, how much are we producing? Or how much money we can make. The minimum estimate is 11 trillion a year. Maximum or normal estimate, it says roughly 25 trillion a year, which is just about what the European Union as a whole, not just one country, but all of Europe does. And that's what the US average does, right? Roughly about 20 to 25 trillion. So natural resources, and this is really interesting. You will have 60% of the global oil reserve. 60%. 45% of the natural gas reserve. Vast mineral, agriculture, and strategic waterways like Suez, Hormuz, Bab al-Mandeb, Malacca. So as resources, the Union will dominate the global energy market. Absolutely dominate it. We can set the price for the global energy market. We become the largest trading partner competing with the United States. And then our currency, I told it, again, hypothetically, our Islamic dinar will be not only rival to the dollar, but it will replace the dollar. And then, according to ChatGPT, the Sharia-compliant financial system will become the financial system for the entire world. Just picture that. It's amazing, right? It's really amazing. Military power will have anywhere from 5 to 6 million soldiers. Reserve forces will have about 10 million. We have nuclear power in both Pakistan, Turkey and Iran, according to it, it's working on it. And for defense industries, we have Turkey, Pakistan, Iran, and Egypt drive indigenous weapon manufacturing. Turkey already does it for Europe, and so on. Strategic depth in North Africa, Southeast Asia provide massive mobility and defense resilience. Right? So major price setting, power, reducing Western leverage, creating a vast free trade zone, possible alternative to US dollar, new global superpower, unified research and development, and stronger global Muslim identity and culture. So just picture the Ottoman Empire coming back to life, spreading all over. Now here's the thing. Allah said, يَمْكُرُ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. Our enemy thinks Islam is a place that has borders. They think Islam is a pin on a map that you can point to it. But God asks us to spread spread Islam, to travel to other lands. God never told us to guard borders, because the purpose of our existence is to spread Islam, and against all odds and all the planning. Every time they go to destroy this religion, the same act that they have done end up resulting in the expansion of the religion. According to many estimates, by 2050, Islam will be the majority in Europe. By 2050, we will have a near majority in the US if we continue at these numbers. So Islam is spreading. They want sand and land. It's absolutely fine to take it for now. But the fact is, as Brother Amran just mentioned, in the US alone, over 27,000 rebirth comes back to Islam. In Europe, the number is even larger. Since this war started, hundreds of thousands across the world joined the ranks of the Muslims. So Islam as a faith, as a religion, as a belief, as an ideology, continue to spread, because that's the promise, right? So they may control the resources, and they may control the land, but they can never control the spirit. When a spirit finds God, finds Allah, they can't take that away from them. Quraysh tried it, trust me, So, with that, I close. I will leave